Imola has finally arrived, but Formula One doesn't get there on tiptoe. Ferrari must recover after the disaster in Miami. Mercedes seeks confirmation for Antonelli in front of his audience. Red Bull is under pressure, and the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile changes the rules amid controversy and backpedaling. As history unfolds, each team competes for more than mere points amidst momentous pauses and unparalleled challenges. And what is really behind Maranello's strategies? What secrets does the new C6 compound hide? Why Verstappen might struggle and why Antonelli has everything to gain on this very track. So, if you want to understand why this weekend can overturn the championship hierarchies, stay with me until the end. Imola offers more than just a Grand Prix. Hit like if you enjoy the videos. Let's get started. Ferrari arrives at Imola for the 7th round of the championship, with the weight of the Miami disaster still on their shoulders. In these 2 weeks, the team has analyzed the collected data in detail, trying to understand where to intervene to improve the performance of the SF25. However, expectations remain low for this weekend. The team will not bring major news to the track, as the most important update is expected for Barcelona, where the new rules on flexible wings will come into effect. For Imola, there will be a minor modification, a revised beam wing designed to offer more setup options and help improve the aerodynamic load on the rear. It won't be a revolution, but it could provide a small advantage. The team's goal is to maximize the performance of the single-seater under the current conditions, exploiting every available margin. The SF25 has a very narrow operating window, and one of the crucial aspects will be finding the right balance between mechanics and aerodynamics. In this sense, the opportunity to take advantage of all 3 free practice sessions can prove valuable for perfecting the setup. A strength that Ferrari can rely on is the management of the curbs, or determining factor at Imola. The SF25 manages to absorb the internal unevenness well without transferring too much vibration to the chassis, an advantage also shared by McLaren that could prove useful against Red Bull. In 2024, the Red One suffered on the long straight but defended itself better in the slower sections of the track. Leclerc had reported problems in managing the hybrid, which did not allow to fully exploit the power in the fastest sections, unlike Red Bull and McLaren. However, slow curves are not a problem for the SF25, and it is in these areas that Ferrari will have to try to make a difference. It will be crucial to find the balance point of the car. The track conditions, temperatures, and the team's ability to react quickly to changes will be determining factors. In addition, the irregularities of the asphalt will force the teams to slightly raise the single-seaters, and this feature could help Ferrari reduce the gap from the leaders. Tire chapter. The Pirelli C6 compound will debut at Imola, never used before. The data is scarce, and managing degradation will be crucial, considering that the track tends to overheat the tires towards the end of the lap. If Ferrari manages the initial warm-up well, it could benefit. Last year, the team lost valuable time due to the slow activation of the front tires in the first chicane, and solving this limitation would make a big difference, especially in qualifying. The SF25 remains a complex single-seater to put in the right window, but the ability to adapt to Imola, especially with these new tires and a more flexible setup, could offer the team the opportunity to limit the damage. A lot will also depend on how much both Leclerc and Hamilton can get out of a weekend, which once again promises to be a chase. The Emilian circuit should better suit the characteristics of the SF25 compared to Miami, where Ferrari suffered heavily, finishing almost a minute behind McLaren. Unlike the American track, at Imola the setup compromises are less extreme, and the technical characteristics could help the Maranello team to perform more effectively. The real problem with the SF25 is confirmed in the low-speed corners that require a long and steady run, where understeer continues to be a clear limit. This is exactly what penalized the drivers in Miami more than in the dry and short corners. Imola with a different mix of corners could mitigate this difficulty, but it remains a challenging track to tackle. Another key issue will be the new C6 compound specifically designed for qualifying. Ferrari has often struggled to get the tires into the right temperature window on a dry lap, and considering how important it is to start ahead on a circuit like this, it will be crucial to make the most of qualifying. Imola marks the start of the European calendar in Formula One, and it could also be the last edition of the Grand Prix held on this historic track if the agreement is not renewed. A real shame, considering how much the drivers appreciate the circuit for its technical characteristics and strong symbolic value. From a braking point of view, Imola is considered a track of medium difficulty. Brembo rates the track's severity index as 3 out of 5. Out of a total of 9 brakes, only one, the Rivazza, requires over 98 yards to slow down. In general, during a qualifying lap like Verstappen's last year, the brakes are used for less than 10.5 seconds in total. The most demanding braking is precisely at turn 17, where you go from 292 to 75.81 miles per hour in just over 2 seconds, with a deceleration of 0.14 ounces and a force of 319 pounds exerted on the pedal. The braking power reaches 2026 kW, making this track particularly significant for Brembo. It was here in 1982 that the Bergamo-based company achieved its first victory with one of its brake calipers, mounted on Didier Pironi's Ferrari 126 C2. The same race also went down in history for the controversy between Pironi and Villeneuve. Before then, Brembo only supplied discs to Ferrari, but with that victory a new era began. The 4-piston aluminum caliper with radial attachment and improved cooling changed the way the system was designed.
Braking. From
2022, Brembo has become the sole supplier of brake calipers for 9 of the 10 F1 teams. Only McLaren still relies on AP Racing, which however belongs to the same Lombard group, a technological dominance that has now lasted for 4 seasons and which has its roots in the history written in Imola. Vassar has confirmed that the first small aerodynamic updates of the season will arrive for Imola, but the real package is expected later for Barcelona, when the new regulations on front wings will also come into effect. The work in the factory has not stopped, and the goal is to put Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in the best possible conditions to maximize what is available, even if expectations should not be too high. The team is aware that every detail counts, especially when racing at home, in front of an audience that represents a huge source of energy, but also pressure. Vassar has emphasized how every aspect has been taken care of in great detail at Maranello to try to get the most out of the SF25 at this much-anticipated event. Without promises or illusions, Ferrari hopes to find a solid performance and maybe give a positive result to its fans. Even though the car's potential is still far from that of the best, the ambition remains to reduce the gap and start the growth path in Europe on the right foot. During the Miami Grand Prix, 2 of Hamilton's team radios attracted attention. First, he joked with a "go ahead and have a tea while you decide." Then he asked if he should also let Sainz pass. The Brit was referring to the slowness of the Ferrari pit wall in giving the order to Leclerc to let him through, despite him having newer and more performant tyres. Unlike in China, where Hamilton had given up his position to Charles without hesitation. In Miami, the decision came too late. The medium tyres were no longer effective, forcing the Englishman to yield the position. The 2 Ferrari drivers finished the race disappointed, respectively in 7th and 8th place. Without tensions between them, but clearly frustrated by the performance of the SF25, Juan Pablo Montoya, interviewed after the weekend, explained that Hamilton simply expected a logical choice from the team. According to him, it is not acceptable to put a driver on better tires and then leave him stuck behind his teammate, compromising his race. Montoya added that it's not about favoring one of the 2 drivers, but about making quick decisions that maximize the team's result. In his opinion, Ferrari today tends to be blocked by the fear of seeming unfair, an attitude that slows down the decision-making process and damages the overall performance, a situation that reminds him of last year's McLaren, unable to adopt more decisive choices in key moments, despite having a title car. The Imola Grand Prix represents a special appointment for Kimi Antonelli, not only because it is run in his homeland, but also because it comes after a very positive weekend in Florida. In Miami, the young driver demonstrated solidity in qualifying and maturity in the race, reducing the gap from his teammate Russell and showing evident progress on multiple fronts. In the first GPs, Kimi had difficulty in properly activating the tires in the preparation lap, losing precious tenths. In Miami, however, he took advantage of a well-balanced Mercedes that allowed him to bring the tires into the right window for the entire lap. However, there is still a limit on the race pace, where the German team is still looking for a consistency that it struggles to find. To improve in this aspect, Mercedes has invested a lot in simulator work, with Antonelli completing hundreds of virtual laps and has been various specific setups for Imola. The return to the format with 3 free practice sessions will be crucial to refine the setup and adapt to a complex track like the Emiliano, made of technical curves, dry brakes, and continuous changes of pace. The most important work for Antonelli will be on tyre management in the race, also taking advantage of the technical updates planned for this Grand Prix. They aim to improve behavior in medium-fast curves, allowing drivers to attack without stressing the tyres too much. In qualifying, however, it will be essential to better understand the behavior of Pirelli's new C6 compound. The goal is clear, even if not explicitly stated, to aim for the first podium in his career in front of the home crowd. To do this, Kimi will have to beat at least two high-level opponents. The first is Russell, still undefeated in the home race, while the other is Verstappen, usually very competitive in Imola. However, Red Bull might struggle on the uneven asphalt, which puts a still fragile car at the front in difficulty. Antonelli arrives prepared and motivated. Now the challenge is to translate the work done away from the track into concrete results in front of his fans. Antonelli, who grew up with the Ferrari myth, admitted that before joining the Mercedes program he was rooting for the red. But in 2017, when Toto Wolff's call came, the choice was immediate, a unique opportunity that he and his family decided to seize without hesitation. 6 races in, the results are beginning to reward that confidence. Antonelli has shown signs of steady growth and also won a pole in the Miami sprint, confirming his potential. The past as a Ferrari fan is now behind me, but the future remains open. At the moment, I'm happy where I am. Mercedes arrives at Imola for the 7th race of the World Championship, with a series of technical developments designed to improve overall effectiveness, particularly on race pace. The package that will debut in Italy is just the first in a series of planned updates and aims to reduce the gap from McLaren, currently the benchmark among the chasing teams. The Imola circuit, very technical, involves a mix of medium-slow curves and only one high-speed point like the Piratella. In this context, the car will be set up with a medium level of aerodynamic load, adjustable thanks to new solutions on the beam wing. Other interventions concern the car floor, which will be modified to provide more vertical load without increasing the resistance to advancement too much. This will allow to maintain good top speeds, one of the strengths of the single-seater. On the mechanical side, Mercedes plans a stiffer rear setup to increase traction coming out of slow corners, making the most of the engine torque. This choice should prove particularly useful in the more tortuous sectors of the track, even though stability in support in corners like the first chicane or the mineral waters remains a potential issue related to the sensitivity of the setup to changes in ground height. In qualifying, the new Pirelli C6 tire represents an unknown variable for all teams. The compound introduced for the first time this season seems to have a favorable usage window and could therefore also help teams that usually struggle on the dry lap. In the race, however, Mercedes' main goal is to reduce degradation and improve management of the tires, to maintain a constant and competitive pace. According to initial simulations, the Grand Prix could be set for 2 stops given the choice of softer compounds compared to 2024. This opens up interesting strategic scenarios. It will be crucial to balance aggression and conservation to avoid performance drops at key moments. If the updates were to give the hoped-for results, Mercedes could position itself as the second force of the weekend, putting pressure on McLaren and trying to keep direct rivals like Ferrari and Red Bull at a distance. Red Bull arrives at Imola with the goal of staying in the wake. McLaren currently the team to beat. The Constructors' Championship seems to be compromised, but the Drivers' title race is still open and Verstappen hopes to have his say if the RB21 continues to improve. The Emilian track represents a significant technical challenge with high-speed corners to slower sections and an uneven asphalt that requires delicate compromises in terms of setup. The circuit presents a complex combination of corners and requires a precise balance between aerodynamics and mechanics. The first 2 sectors reward aerodynamic grip, while the final stretch demands good mechanical grip, especially on the rear suspensions. In this context, finding the right operating window for the single-seater becomes crucial considering how tight the competition is in 2025. Another central theme is the behavior of the car on the curbs. In Imola, the track is much more uneven than in Miami, and the RB21 might struggle as already happened in 2024 with the RB20. The team has worked to improve the car's response on uneven asphalt, also intervening on the internal arrangement of the suspensions. However, the search for load without excessively stiffening the setup remains a challenge, also because McLaren has already demonstrated that it can manage this balance better than others. Another unknown will be the management of the tires. Red Bull, especially with high temperatures, tends to suffer a more marked degradation compared to McLaren. The problem of tire wear remains, and the team is working to improve thermal management and keep the tires in the right temperature window for the entire stint. According to the team, some small updates introduced from Jeddah are starting to bear fruit, even though the benefits are hard to see with the naked eye. Paul Monaghan also confirmed this, explaining that every little step is useful to reduce the gap. Imola will therefore be an important test bench. The RB21 will have to find an effective setup on a technical and challenging track where every detail can make a difference. Adrian Newey has made statements that have not gone unnoticed, highlighting some structural differences between his past at Red Bull and his current experience at Aston Martin. The British designer, now a key figure in the Silverstone team's 2025 project, praised the modern infrastructure provided by Lawrence Stroll, describing them as the best in F1, but also emphasized that success does not depend solely on technology, but above all on people. Newey explained that, despite Red Bull having one of the worst wind tunnels in Formula 1 and working in modest buildings in an industrial area, it was still able to create a highly effective environment thanks to perfect organization and synergy among team members. It's that efficiency, he said, that allowed Red Bull to dominate for years, even without facilities on par with the competition. Aware that the potential of the new infrastructure will only make a difference if it is supported by an adequate number of people and an improvement in internal collaboration. The message is clear, the resources are there, but they need to be fully utilized through teamwork. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has decided to amend Appendix B of the International Sporting Code, softening the rules introduced in January 2025 for expressions considered harmful or offensive. Following the criticism received, President Mohamed Ben Sulayem has promoted a more balanced review in collaboration with the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile Drivers Committee, the stewards, and affiliated clubs. The new sanctions provide that the use of swear words or phrases deemed damaging to the image of the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile in official contexts such as interviews or podiums will result in a fine of up to a maximum of €5,000 compared to the initially planned €10,000. However, aggravating circumstances can increase the penalty. As for offensive behavior towards race officials, the fine is replaced by a sporting penalty. If the incident occurs outside of sprints or GPs, the driver will receive at least 3 grid penalty positions. If the incident occurs during a race, the minimum penalty will be 5 seconds. In more serious cases, such as incitement to violence or statements on political, religious, or personal issues, the fine can go up to €20,000. Ben Sulayem explained that the goal is to ensure a balance between sportsmanship and freedom of expression, providing commissioners with clearer tools to intervene without compromising the competitive atmosphere. He also emphasized the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile's commitment to keeping the sport inclusive and respectful for the entire automotive community. If you liked the video, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss out. Next ones, let me know what you think in the comments, and see you next time.